We welcome everyone. I see people are still coming in. We expect more to join. But I think we can just begin and the rest will join us. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us from. So we welcome you to this session of today's webinar session on developing compelling proposals for grant funding. So the session is being recorded. Let's go to the next slide. So just to give an introduction of who or what the Transforming Energy Access Facility is. So this is a research and innovation platform that is supporting technologies, piloting of business models and skills that are needed to enable an inclusive transition to clean energy. So the Transforming Energy Access Platform, which is also known as T in short, works with a high diverse network of partner organizations to deliver its mandate of accelerating innovation, scaling clean energy access, and building local capacity across different regions, also in sub-Saharan Africa, in South Asia, and also in the Indo-Pacific areas. And one of the projects that is under the T platform is the technical assistance component, which is part of the local partnership inclusion project, which essentially identified the need for providing technical support to local companies to scale their operations and advance innovation towards achieving sustainable development goal 7. And we know that local partners often face numerous challenges in getting innovative solutions from concept stage to commercialization. And one of the barriers, which is actually the key barriers that they face, is accessing financing. And one of the ways that local organizations can bridge the financing gap is through grant funding. But again, even accessing grant funding for them is quite a rigorous process in terms of putting together their applications, because the process is quite competitive. And therefore, you find that many local organizations may not have the same level of experience and expertise that is required to put together a proposal that we can term as a quality proposal that will then enable them attract grant funding. So this becomes one of the challenges. And therefore, given this backdrop, EED Advisory was selected to manage the technical assistance facility as part of the LPI Inclusion Act project. And the aim of the technical assistance facility is then to maximize the potential of local partners to successfully access grants. And so far, since the launch of this project in last year in April, we have been able to support 17 local organizations to apply for 3 open calls at different times. So we've supported as the first round of the Powering Healthcare Innovation Fund call. We also supported PRIO, and the last one was the ZGen open call. And this is the technical assistance facility is basically designed to support local organizations through a tailored approach. And this helps them putting together their applications to the specific open calls during the open call window, which usually lasts between 5 to 8 weeks, depending on the call. So this would vary from call to call. And what we do here is provide them with the pre-application support, which essentially helps them identify some of the challenges that they have in terms of putting together their applications. But again, I'll talk about this later towards the end of the slide, and also supporting them with due diligence, because again, we know that this is a process that is quite rigorous, And many organizations may not be able to tick the boxes that the funders are required. So we help them through this process so that they're able to ensure that they have all the requirements in terms of documentation, the policies that may be required by the different grant makers, and also support them with development of templates, because we know that some of these grant makers don't put, for instance, proposal applications. They may not have the templates, and having a template in place then would help these local organizations ensure that they submit high standard proposals. And the aim again is not just to give them skills for the current open calls, but again, this is skills that they can use even post the T program. So this is something that they can carry on throughout within their operations. In terms of eligibility, so the T program is eligible for organizations, business entities, enterprises, and entrepreneurs who are within the clean energy sector within sub-Saharan African countries, except for South Africa. The other one is the Southeast Asia. So this includes Bangladesh, Indonesia, Pakistan, Philippines, and Vietnam, and also the Indo-Pacific, including Fiji, Papua New Guinea, Samoa, Solomon Islands, and Vanuatu. So like I mentioned, this is a technical assistance facility developed by the EED advisory. But just to mention that this is funded by the UK aid from the UK government via the Transforming Energy Access platform. And just as a disclaimer is that the views that are expressed during the webinar are those of EED advisory and do not necessarily reflect the UK government's official policies. On to the next slide. So for today, looking at a grant application. So these are some of the objectives of the webinar for today. So we expect that at the end of the day today, we should be able to have some insights on preparing ourselves for grant writing, given the open call that have been put up, and also helping us put together compelling proposals, ensuring that we have gotten the budgeting techniques, which is quite a key component of the budgeting of the proposal writing process, and also just to highlight some of the problems or some of the challenges that the mistakes that we make as we develop our proposals. And we'll also look at some of the case studies that have been highlighted that have successfully accessed grant of financing. So onto this stage, I want to welcome our speaker, and we are privileged to have Dr. Benjamin Robbinson on board, who will be taking us through the next 30 minutes. And Dr. Benjamin Robinson's work mainly focuses on action and policy. He's worked a lot on projects based across the humanitarian and the wider international development agency access space. He has worked with many entities, including but not limited to UN agencies, international organizations, and supported locally led businesses and grassroots organizations to champion their innovative ideas within their ecosystems. So without further ado, I want to welcome Dr. Benjamin Robinson to take us through the session. But just to let you know that feel free to post your questions in the Q&A section, and we will respond to them as they come in. And also we could have a moment to highlight them towards the end of the session. And also, if you have questions that are specific to the different slides, feel free to mention what slide it is, and we will go back to it. So thank you, and welcome, Dr. Benjamin Robinson, and take the floor.
Thanks, Abigail. Hi, everyone. Yeah, as Abigail said, I'm Ben, and I'm going to be taking you through the majority of the content for today over the next 30 minutes. As Abigail said, please post your questions in the chat and we will answer them at the end. I would also add that we're always looking to improve our processes and our training packets. So if you feel that something's been missed or you want more information about something, just please, as I said, put a question in the chat. So the first section, grant preparedness. Next slide, please. So before jumping into all of those great ideas you have and putting them down on paper, the first question you need to ask yourself is your organization ready to apply for funds? As someone who's applied to many grant processes in the past, the first step is to always check the organizational ability criteria. And that typically includes the factors that you see on the screen. These include your legal incorporation and tax status. Do you have a board of directors? Are they engaged as an active part of your decision-making process? Do you have ways of being able to demonstrate your organizational credibility? This means, for example, do you have expertise in this area? What's your previous experience as an organization? Do you even have the correct number of staff to handle a proposed implementation, or do you need to collaborate outside your organization? And given the structure of the Powering Healthcare Innovation Fund, this probably will include demonstrating experience in research, data, sustainability, and innovative financing models. We can jump back with a slide. So specifically for T partners, it's really important to be able to demonstrate your ability to measure impacts and community outcomes. Like, what frameworks are you currently using to enable this process? That's a very important one. It's a document that we'll talk about later. And finally, how are you partnering and collaborating with, and more in general, working with the communities that you serve? As organizations, this means do you have formal and informal strategic relationships that help do your work more effectively? These can be links to, just off the top of my head, community-led finance organizations, say activist organizations, and wider organizations that ultimately enable you to do your job more effectively. Slide, please. So you've determined that your organization is eligible for funding under this grant-making process. The next step is to determine whether you have an idea and approach that is ready for funding. We find there are 4 typical questions for assessing the readiness of your projects. And these are, what are the goals of your project? And are they SMART? So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. It's critical, and especially from the funder's perspective, that you understand and are able to articulate and track your outputs, outcomes, and impacts. Second, are your goals technically, financially, and operationally viable? And can you prove this with examples of your work, either in the years before you applied to this grant or through similar projects in similar but not exact sectors? And a really critical component of financial viability is budgeting. Have you put together a detailed project budget that captures all of the expenses, both fixed and variable, that determine your project success? We'll talk a bit more about that later, and we also have an additional session in the TA that directly focuses on that. And so touching on experience and capacity again, whilst your organization might fit nicely with the call, do you have adequate capacity to implement the project? And how does this project relate with your core mandate? One of the most difficult parts of writing these proposals is understanding how your ideas turn into project reality or implementation. And so these last 5 questions around implementation help determine that, which helpfully echoes sort of the rest of this session is going. So how does the project engage relevant stakeholders, community members, partners, and target communities? 7, is there a sustainable plan? 8, what are the project risks and what are the mitigation strategies? 9, has a monitoring and evaluation framework been established? We'll talk a bit more about M&E later. And finally, and importantly, does the project comply with the relevant laws, regulations, and funding requirements? I mean, this is really critical, especially when we're talking about engaging in projects that look to leverage, say, more informal or community-led ways of running projects that we exist within the legal framework of the specific context. So Next, as we go forward, I think a special word for SDG 7. So you've read the eligibility criteria. You think that you have a project that satisfies the basic requirements of, in this case, the Powering Healthcare call. Now you need to think, how do I tailor the pitch so that the strategic objectives of my proposal contributes to the strategic objectives of the funder? In this case, how can I use the information in the Powering Healthcare documentation? So that's around the, say, short, intermediate, long-term outcomes, as well as their expected impacts. How can I use that information to tailor my proposal? And this means you probably need to think about everything on the screen. So what way are you building and sharing capacity? Are you leveraging public-private partnerships? Are you working in the energy access space or energy efficiency or transition space? Are we potentially talking about this contributing to the just transition? How are you linking your work, say, in this just transition space to gender equality, capacity building, and sharing? And then when considering the financial side of the project, are you leveraging an innovative financing model that enables a form of, say, sustainable financing for all? Are you doing this through data-driven decision-making or leveraging decentralized energy systems? I think I managed to cover all of the things on the screen there. And I know it sounds like a lot of buzzwords, and it really is. The thing that makes your grant proposal stand out is how you transform these buzzwords into operationalizable and smart, remember that from the slide before, goals. That's the key here. Next slide, please. So to quickly recap as we're going through this process, 1, is my organizational eligible for funding? I've gone through the project documentation, I think it is. 2, do I have a project that also meets these eligibility criteria? Yeah, probably I do. 3, how is my project tying these criteria to strategic goals, both mine and the funders as well? In this case, aligning with some form of SDG 7 alignment. And if you're ticking all of those boxes, you need to think about the next stage. And that is demonstrating financial capacity for grant funding. And so all grant processes, not only this one, but in general, are about proving to the funder or convincing them that their money is going to be safe and well spent with you. In fact, that your organization is the best place for them to put their money. And so these 5 dimensions are really important when demonstrating that. So first up, we have organizational and program budgets. So document how funds will be utilized, whether that's staff costs, project expenses for travel, transport, accommodation, etc. Or potentially whether that's funds for operational research or technical research or other forms of expenditure. It all needs to be documented. Second, you need to have a robust financial strategy and method of tracking that process. So some form of accounting process that enables you to understand how and where the money is being spent. Whether or not you are, say, in front or behind the budget, and how you can correct, say, these under or overspending if needed. Third is compliance with tax filing requirements. This is normally through providing financial statements from previous years, and this is 4th on the list. But given the TA is geared towards small and local organization, this might not be possible. We will then need to find other ways of being able to demonstrate this financial providence, either from audits or other. And so, as Abigail said, this is a really core component of the TA. The whole reason for the TA existing is to enable organizations that haven't traditionally been able to apply for these funds to gain access to them. So again, finding alternate proof is really important. And finally, and this links to having robust financial processes, demonstrating the capacity and availability of your internal financial person or mechanisms to conduct this financial reporting. You obviously need someone to do all of this financial work. Slide, please. And so on to the final slide of this section. So you're an organization that satisfies the eligibility criteria. You have project with strong goals that align to the goals of the funder, have good financial planning, connection to the people who you're trying to work with, and strategic alignments across all of that with the funder. And you can additionally demonstrate that your own financial processes can handle a project like this. For example, in the wording in the Powering Healthcare call, it says something like managed at least 2 grants or projects of similar value to the proposal in the last 3 years. Then it's time to start working on the grant documentation. And so in this case, we have 8 steps shown on the screen. Step 1, read the grant guidelines. Hopefully, given you've been through the previous processes, you've already done that. 2, developing a compelling project proposal with SMART goals, concrete deliverables, and reasonable timelines. 3, filling in that application form to ensure that you provide all of the information so that you meet the basic requirements of the grant. So that can also include any other additional supporting documentation. 4, develop and submit a budget that builds on your organizational information to demonstrate all of these things. In this case, it might not be completely standard. As I said in the previous slide, you might not be able to say demonstrate the financial history through the traditional means, but you might be able to provide that through audits or others. But the key is to convince the funder that your organization is a meaningful place for them to put their cash, that their cash is going to be catalytic in the movement that they're trying to create. And we'll talk a bit more about catalytic funding and what that means in a second. And so I think we're on to 6 now, your evaluation plan. And so your evaluation plan should come naturally out of your project proposal. It should be connected to your goals and to your mission, and it should preferably milestone your project. You need to use some kind of standardized framework linked to your project goals, maybe potentially leveraging sort of key performance indicators or others, but that's sort of down to you. And we'll talk again a bit more about this on the coming slides. And so next is the supporting documentation. And we've talked a lot about this already. I would just add that it can include things like letters of support from organizations that you've worked with but aren't project partners. It's all about trying to build your case and demonstrate your suitability for that grant process. And finally, your collaboration agreements. And so these documents shape the relationship with your project partners and normally include how you're going to work together, how to share your data, what sort of data protection agreements you have between organizations, what your roles are, what the expectations are, and how you both fit together to benefit the outcome of the project. And I think it's especially important for TCORs if you're going to partner with organizations, to effectively balance these skills and experiences to overcome any, say, shortfalls that you have in your organization that you can't demonstrate in the key project areas. Collaboration is always the route to success. And so on to section 2. What does it take to craft a compelling project description? Next slide. And so by this point, you're probably hearing the themes, and they mostly revolve around understanding how you can shape a project that helps you and the funder achieve their strategic aims through some form of SMART and measurable goals. I think that's the key thing to take away from this. And a simple way to do that is to have a clear and concise statement of needs. This includes outlining the overall goals and objectives of the project, why the issue is urgent and needs attention, potentially the consequences of not addressing the issue. And here's where it's really important to present the exact issue you're trying to address. It's really important that you are specific and not general in this area. And we provide a number of additional examples at the end where we can just walk through them as well. And as I've said before, it's really important that you have measurable outcomes and impact metrics. Who will benefit from the project? What does the benefit look like? How will this impact future projects and future needs in your space? And how do these questions relate to the mandated outcomes and impacts in the grant documentation? And so on the right-hand side of the page, you see a sample statement of needs. And this is a project for projects in Malawi around healthcare electrification, but it gives you an idea or a starting point for how to clearly describe your project and how you can demonstrate that it's possible within your organizations. Within your statement of needs, wild suggestions based on unachievable goals are going to be very quickly highlighted as, unachievable. Next slide, please. So on to section 3, budgeting techniques for grant applications. I'll open this section by saying, for these kind of more innovation style projects, budgeting is very challenging. It requires you not only to understand what you are, say, directly and indirectly spending the money on in your project, but what is the impact of changing project needs, which are a direct result of simply understanding more about your focus area. Typically, these innovation projects, they evolve as time goes on, and that requires the budget to evolve with you. And so there are 2 parts to generating a budget for grant applications. And so one is the simple process of creating a budget, but the other is thinking, how is this budget going to be evaluated, and how can I tailor my budget to the requirements of the person evaluating? So let's start at the beginning. What is a grant budget? So it's a detailed financial plan that outlines how your organization will allocate grant funding to support the implementation of a project or program. And so, as the 5-step guide says, how do I create a grant budget? And we have a more detailed session on this in the technical assistance. So I advise, if you're interested, that you apply to be part of that. But in 5 simple steps, review the guidelines. Identify all the potential expenses associated with implementing the project. This includes both the direct and indirect costs, as well as factoring in unexpected costs. So being able to determine and manage these unexpected costs is really a critical part of these projects and requires not only a detailed understanding of the financials of the project, but a good relationship with the funder so that when the project goals evolve, you can work with the funder to determine what's possible within the budget. As I said, it's innovation work. The unexpected is almost expected. And so after you've been through those steps, obviously drafting your budget and revising it accordingly. But now it's important that that budget is aligned with the funder's expectations. And there are a couple of steps into doing this. The first is obviously, as I've said a few times before, reviewing the funding guidelines, which spell out, say, the level of funding available, duration of funding, items eligible for funding, etc. Maybe it's percentage of indirect costs as a proportion of the total costs, etc. They're pretty rigid normally. But it's also great to think about what the grant reviewers may be looking for. And within the Powering Healthcare process, you have supplied to you a detailed evaluation criteria for the financial proposal. And so you can use this as a basis. But it includes understanding things like, is the budget aligned with priorities, needs, feasibility, sustainability, outcomes and impacts, compliance, ethics, etc., etc. Next slide, please. So we arrive at section 4, as I said earlier, monitoring and evaluation section. So monitoring and evaluation, or M&E, as you might hear me call it, or MEAL, monitoring, evaluation, and learning, as it's sometimes called, is a system that assists organizations essentially in connecting grant financing to grant-related impacts, as well as providing evidence-based data for reporting to grant providers and other stakeholders, and acting as the key tool in managing project progression over the life of the project. So it's a really important thing that is clear and understandable. And like I said at the beginning, also, it's important that these M&E systems are connected to your project goals. And in the case of the Powering Healthcare Call, that will be linked to the funding guidelines And there, as I said earlier, there are already a number of suggestions of various outputs and impacts that you can link these to. So then what's the process of setting up an effective monitoring and evaluation system? It starts with understanding the baseline indicators, KPIs, grant metrics, whatever you want to call them. And from there, you have to define your clear objectives and indicators. It's then critical to establish who is responsible for each one of these indicators and then communicate to them that they are the owner of that indicator and it is their responsibility. You then need to develop a monitoring plan. So that is, where's your data coming from? How often? What are the tools you're going to use to check these objectives? Are you doing manual monitoring processes? Are you doing remote monitoring processes, Internet of Things enabled monitoring processes, etc.? Now, next, based upon all that information, you need to develop the evaluation framework itself. And that includes, as I said, understanding what the project goals are, how you're going to collect data, what are your time periods, etc., etc. Then you need to systematically and over the life of the project carry out this data collection. It's important that this doesn't only happen at the end, that is a common mistake, but throughout the project. This means that you are essentially constantly conducting M&E analysis and reporting on your process. As I said, these are innovation projects, so it's important that you then feed back this information to your funder or your collaborators to understand if you need to potentially modify your original goals so they align more effectively with your project and ultimately the energy needs that you're trying to solve. This process is circular and it's really important to embrace that. Slide, please. So, risk management and sustainability planning. I know I say that all of these components are challenging, especially around budgeting and risk, but I think probably this is the most challenging component of the grant process. It blends your deep experience of the environments that you operate within and the needs of funders to understand that their funds are being spent in a way that minimizes risk through demonstrable mitigation actions. So for those of you in the room who aren't familiar with risk matrices or the risk assessment matrix, the risk level, as you can see on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, equals the likelihood times the impact. And so, for example, if you take the matrices on the right, if you had a major impact with a rare likelihood, then you would times 4 by 1, and you would be left with a medium risk, as you see in that table. And so this enables you to understand both what is possible within your project and what has the potential to have impact. More risky actions tend to have bigger impacts, but a higher likelihood of them not coming off. Back one slide. So usually your project goals or KPIs would each individually have a risk level associated with them in terms of whether they were on time or behind time. In addition to these programmatic risks that come to mind the most easily, there are also other risks. So financial risks, organizational risks, reputational risks, compliance risks, environmental risks. When it comes to risk, it's always helpful to have someone to determine the risk level who has experience within this risk within this topic area. And the final thing I'll say about risk is that it's important to remember that the way in which people perceive risk is not the same. So you as an individual versus you as an organization versus your funder will all perceive risks in a different way. And so it's important, like with getting into the mind of your grant assessor for the budgeting work, that you get into the mind of the assessor for your risk assessment work as well. Slide, please. So on to the next slide, and let's talk about planning for sustainability in grant applications. I think most of us are in this webinar, in this room, because we understand that long-term change needs to happen in our sector. We appreciate that it's really important for our projects and programs to have both operational and financial sustainability so that they can have long-term impacts. Funders also share these thoughts and often ask, how do you intend to sustain the project or program beyond the grant term? I think that's the important thing, right? And it's really important you consider this. When funders talk about grants, they're actually talking about not a one-off payment and doing some project work, but how the money that we give you as part of this grant can catalyze your work into something bigger. It's all about springboarding the funds. And so this means that funders will often want to know, does your organization have experience in this area? Has your organization successfully executed projects? How are you blending different finance models? How are you building partnerships to ensure sustainability? What are your organization's strategic goals going into the future? And these questions mirror the questions that we're talking about in the beginning, right? To be successful in these processes, you need to be able to demonstrate, maybe conventional or unconventionally, but demonstrate to the funder that you're worth investing in. And so by addressing these elements and answering these questions on the screen, you are definitely increasing your chances of winning that grant. Next slide, please. So a number of case studies to bring this to a close. And these are 3 case studies actually that you may or may not have heard of, but I would definitely recommend looking into the Powering Healthcare case studies from the first round of funding. It helps you really understand what the fund provides grants for and how you can position your own organizations to help that. So first on the screen, we have Mason Tiska from Madagascar. I apologize if I didn't pronounce your name right. This is one I really struggle with. And so the goal of their project was to provide electricity to rural healthcare facilities and community access services. And they're doing that through solar PV systems, as well as offering additional services for solar lantern rental, phone charging, freezer rental services. This dual impact is very interesting, being able to leverage the benefits of large-scale solar systems to benefit the surrounding community. And so then in their methodology, they're using a hybrid model combining sort of energy as a service models and pay-go systems, which allow them to provide more tailored financial ecosystems depending on their specific customers. And their overall impact, they decided to do this in 12 healthcare facilities. And obviously it has the additionality of the community impact as well. Next slide, please. Next, we have Biogas Solutions Uganda Limited. And so BSUL are a biogas company that are leveraging their biogas systems for healthcare electrification in humanitarian settings. And so their value proposition essentially is around how can we utilize waste to provide energy to these people through bottling biogas. And so they've additionally, in order to, let's say, tech enable their idea, have partnered with Inclusive Energy, who are providing IoT-enabled smart meters so that they can have a detailed understanding of their data insights, as well as provide better services to the institutions because they have real-time data processing facilities. And their impact of that is that they're doing it in 3 healthcare facilities, and they will benefit from these services. And they're doing that on a free distribution model. Next slide, please. And so our final case study is Nugent Technology in Nigeria, and they are providing electricity and medical grade oxygen to hospitals in Nigeria. And so they will install their solar PV systems along with what they call zero emission generators, zero emission just head water generators. And that produces both power and medical grade oxygen provision to 3 healthcare facilities. They're going to build this around a service offering that charges for services on a monthly basis, but includes the maintenance and operation of the systems to ensure that they have demonstrated the long-term sustainability of that process. and that will impact 3 hospitals across the region. And that's my final slide. Thank you very much all for listening. Please drop your questions in the chat, and I will now hand over to my colleague, Abigail.
Yes, thanks, Ben, for those very insightful comments and taking us through the grant application process. And just to let you know that there are a couple of activities that will be going on between now and the submission of proposals that has been to the Powering Healthcare Innovation Fund call. Maybe to the next slide. So this is the first webinar that we scheduled to support the general approach to the technical assistance facility. So we have scheduled another webinar, which will be happening on Friday, 1st of August at 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. East African time on Zoom. So we encourage that in case you have not registered, please go ahead and register for it. And this will be on navigating the grant application process, therefore providing some guidance to participants, taking us through each and every step of identifying suitable grant opportunities and how to navigate the whole application process. And for the next steps regarding the activities on the technical assistance facilities, so this is to let you know that the applications are currently open and we are receiving applications for those interested in joining the technical assistance facility. And this will be in line with the Powering Healthcare Innovation Fund call round 2. So this closes on the 3rd of August. And once this closes, we'll do an evaluation and notify those who've succeeded to the technical assistance facility. After that, we will organize for kickoff meetings, which then mark the beginning of the tailored technical assistance sessions. So just to let you know of what these tailored technical assistance sessions will cover, include understanding grant financing, budgeting. I know this is something that is quite important for most of us, gender inclusion and social equity, understanding the grant review process, and also managing grants even after we've received them. On to the next slide. Yes. So during this period, we will also review these applications because these are one-on-one sessions where we get to understand what the local partners need in terms of submitting and developing their proposals before they submit, reviewing this application and just ensuring that all that is required to go into submitting a good proposal is done before the submission of the proposals, which will be happening on the 8th of September. So by 8th, that is when we finish the technical assistance facility. So just for more information on the Powering Healthcare Innovation Fund call, you can check their website. The call is open to support 3 to 6 grantees, and the funding is up to 80,000 USD per grantee. And the maximum available funding for this cycle is 300,000 US dollars. So this closes on 8th of September. And it's good to just go and check what the eligibility is in terms of focus countries, because they're very specific on the countries they're focusing on. So we have the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ghana, Kenya, Madagascar, Malawi, Mozambique, Nigeria, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia. And this is just providing very brief highlights of the open call, and kindly visit the SC4All website to get comprehensive details of the open call. So I see we still have some couple of minutes. We could check on the chat. I know there's a question that had been asked, but probably you've tackled it, Ben, but just maybe just to lay some emphasis on it. on the sustainability plan. So there's a question of if this refers to a strong strategic plan or environmental sustainability. So maybe we could just highlight this on the platform.
Yeah, sure. I think I might need a bit more clarification around the question. I guess the question is around demonstrating financial sustainability in the long term, and you can do that through a number of different ways. One is within your budgeting process, demonstrate that this project will unlock new types of funding for you in the future, or maybe it's in a more programmatic sense. So the project area that you're working on is catalyzing the sector to grow, and then you can demonstrate that there is a sort of sustainable marketplace for what you are developing.
Okay.
Feel
I
free to
hope that
clarify the question in the chat.
okay. Thanks for Ben for that. So there's another question on maybe we could just highlight it for everyone else on. So I'll just read it. Financial viability is a tricky element for us. Our organization is mission focused, and our goal is to help off-grid communities that we support to develop local governance skills that includes but not limited to renewable energy, and that they can go on to replicate this process in the communities around them. In the end, if successful, we will put ourselves out of business. So sustainability is linked to the successful replication of the design and installation of wind turbines from locally procured parts. There's this approach which has large social and not solely a product element, appeal to donors. I think this would apply to a similar context where there is more social projects and checking on if this essentially would become eventually viable for the local organization. Right, Ben?
Yeah, definitely interesting to donor organizations. Donors, I mean, they're interested in impact, right? And if you create a model that enables you to successfully hand over energy systems to the communities that you are working with, and they can provide the operation and maintenance of those systems without you being involved, then that's perfect. That's a win-win. I think that speaks to this idea of grant money as catalytic funding, right? And so you can set up structures, and then if they run by themselves, great. Donors are always interested in that. And then if you can replicate that in somewhere else or scale that process within that community to reach more people, yeah, donors are always interested.
Yeah, and maybe just to add to what Ben has mentioned, it goes back to checking what the scope of the funding is. Yeah, so you can always align what you do because again, some of these projects will find that they're focused on climate action, development, social impact. So just checking around what the scope of the call is that you want to respond to, and just align your proposal to that funding scope. Yeah.
Yeah, I would build on that answer, Abigail, and say that the nice thing about the Powering Healthcare call is that there's a component of research in there. So they are actively asking organizations to explore innovative or like non-traditional ways of doing project processes or project programs. And that also answers the other question in the Q&A right now around I know that the question is saying, I know that solar PV tends to be the preferred domain, but we're using wind resources. Absolutely, that would be eligible as long as it had a powering healthcare component. As you saw in the case studies, biogas BSUL in Uganda, they are using biogas to initiate that healthcare electrification. So energy generation, as long as the energy used is healthcare, energy generation can be anything that sits in this like sustainable energy, renewable energy domain.
Thanks, Ben. I don't see any other question in the chat. Feel free to post your questions. We still have 10 minutes, so we could utilize this time to ask our questions, seek clarification where we need it. But even as we do that, I just want to encourage all of us to register for the next session of the webinars. The registration is still open. Like I said before, this will be happening on Friday, the 1st of August. And again, feel free to visit. Yes, I see a hand. Feel free to unmute. Viala, I hope I pronounced that right.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, go ahead.
I want to ask if early stage or pre-seed phase projects could attempt to this application.
Probably there's a challenge out there.
Yes. Even if they don't
But you can
have
feel free to post your question in the chat, and we will be sure to answer to it.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
So
Viala,
like
as
I was saying
you're
before, let's keep registering. There's still room for registration. The call comes up on Friday, and also let's visit the technical assistance facility webpage, where we can get more information about the technical assistance facility, the eligibility criteria, and all the information even regarding the current technical assistance facility that we are running. You can also follow them on their LinkedIn page, where you will be able to get notifications of any open calls that will be coming up, because there are different partners who have calls from time to time. So these are usually posted on the LinkedIn page. And if you have any additional comments, also feel free to reach out to us on email. The contacts will be provided on chat, but also these are also accessible on the T website. And even as we wind up, I see we have 5 minutes. I want to thank all those who've been able to join this call, and those who've managed to stay to the end. I believe this has been quite a useful session, and will go a long way in supporting your grant writing process now and even into the future, even as we keep building on our different capacities at the different levels where we are at. And I wish you all the best, even as you apply to the technical assistance facility, and also to the to submit, as you plan to submit your proposals to the Power Healthcare Innovation Fund call for those who are eligible. Yes, just to check if we have questions before our 6 minutes. Yes, so you will access the recording. So once we are done with this, we will post it on it will be posted on the T website. So you should be able to access it and listen to it and review it again. Yes, again, on the eligibility criteria, we have all this listed out on the T website. So let me just post it on the chat so that we all have access to it. The T website.
there's a question that I think is good to answer live, and someone has written in the chat.
So
I would
the
like
next
to know.
webinar session, I'm posting the webinars. I'm posting the T website where we can access the link to register for the next webinar session. I have posted it on the Q&A section, but I'd also posted on the chat for all of us to get it. So there it is. I hope you are all able to access it and register. Yeah, I think we've tackled most of the questions, or all, if not, be open to now. Okay. And just to appreciate all those who supported the process from EED side, starting with our speaker, Dr. Benjamin Robbinson, who has provided us with great insights on grant application process, and to my colleagues, Joyce Zirungu, Hanka Heye, and Ian Bugwa, who have been working in the background to support the process. And special thanks to the Technical Assistance Facility Project team members from Carbon Trust, Harriet Bradshaw Smith from Carbon Trust, Arif Aninjab, Carbon Trust, and also the Carbon Trust communication teams who've been quite instrumental in putting up the posts on LinkedIn and on the website, and also to Dr. Elizabeth Raskwala, who's part of the project team members. Thank you so much for being part of the process and for seeing to it that this information goes out to our local partners and support our local partners. Yeah. Any last thing before we close? So you have 3 more minutes. Yes. So the recordings and the slides will all be available on the T website.